Luffy finally reveals himself as Nika to the Giants of Elbaf by slaying a celestial dragon. The cover page of One Piece chapter 1175, titled Nidhogg, features 3 koala joeys on Sabo while their koala father eats eucalyptus leaves at a table with Koala herself. A flaming boot was raised by the Straw Hat's cook. Sanji broke the thorny binding surrounding Robin. Nami rushed to her side, happy to see that her friend was alright. Robin quickly expressed her gratitude. Usopp was really impressed by Sanji's ability, while Jinbei took note of the fact that the vines are weak to intense heat and thanked Sanji too. But despite her release, Robin reminded the others that there are still dangers at large. Turning elsewhere, Sanji agreed. Between the outpour of haki he's sensing and that island-shaking roar, something big is definitely going on. And speaking of big, they couldn't help but notice a titanic shadow. The children and their injured loved ones were brought to the West Village. Elder Ja Rule and the other giants were shocked by their condition. The kids desperately begged for help, explaining that their thorns were to blame for the injuries. The West Village giants were still fighting against the demonic giant warrior pirates, so they barked at Loki to take the children somewhere safer. But the massive destroyer had no such interest. They jumped on his back of their own accord, so he was simply dropping them off. Besides, they weren't the only ones he wanted to get off of him. While the nightmare creatures blanched at the sight of the dragon, Luffy didn't pay the prince's words any mind, and just called out to Zoro once he spotted him. At the same time, Elder Ja Rule announced to all of Elbaf that the children are finally safe. The other Straw Hats were relieved by the news, while the giant warriors of Elbaf cheered. Looking up at his waving captain, Zoro complained about their tardiness. Luffy confirmed that the dragon he's with is Loki, and despite the demonic Dory and Brogy, he figures that West Village should be safe with his swordsman friend around, which Zoro agreed with. Still no sign of the demonic captains after they hacked into one another with their attacks. But since Luffy is already in his huge form, he asked if he and Loki can handle the dream monsters, as they can't afford to let the monstrosities continue their rampage. Luffy agreed just before a loud thudding caught his attention. Oimo removed a huge thorn from himself that suddenly showered down with many others. The adults shouted for the children to be taken to safety, while they themselves were too injured to move. They scorned the sight of their persistent pursuer. Saint Summers was beyond livid. He refused to let a single one of them survive after being robbed of such satisfyingly sentimental ends. Luffy's jaw fell at the sight. Saint Summers rationalized that maybe this was for the best. Now that the children have been saved, the mission has yet to become a total failure. There's still time to take them to the Holy Land. As with a trifecta of cannon-mouthed thorn serpents, the Nightly Celestial Dragon prepared to finish off the giant parents. But the children moved before his thorns were launched. Standing firm with all but Ronja's eyes shut, they refused to let him hurt their loved ones. This time, they'd be the ones to sacrifice themselves for their saviors. Saint Summers was overwhelmed by the display. Shaking, crying, and gurgling with a jostling tongue, they were just way too satisfying for the sinister sadist. So much so that he decided to disregard the mission entirely and just have his fun. He would accept annihilation at the hands of Imu in exchange for cutting their lives short. With his arms spread, he shot his thorns while promising never to forget the brave looks on their stupid little faces. Ripley begged her son to run, but Colin wouldn't budge if it meant leaving her unprotected. The first thorn hit the ground beside him, and he didn't move. And more were just a moment away from ending them all. But a rushing Zoro neutralized them before they could land. A laughing Luffy cheered his friend on, knowing that he'd handle things. In turn, the swordsman told Luffy that it's his turn. Saint Summers shouted his disbelief, questioning who the heck just ruined his fun. Then, overhead with a coiled arm, holding a bolt of lightning, Luffy introduced the jerk to his crewmate, Zoro. With his free hand, Luffy emulated a marksman and locked onto Saint Summers. His arm swelled and darkened with haki above his confused target. Ripley lost her breath at the sight, while Saint Summers paled at the impending devastation. Booming Dawn Thor Rifle! It hit the Celestial Dragon directly, tearing the thorn serpents apart. And man, the celestial dragon was brutally obliterated. Haki and lightning surged in all directions. Oimo and Road were pleased by the sight of their friends. Yova and the other kids noticed that their thorn bindings had finally fallen away. Looking up at their laughing savior, Polan called out to his mom. Staring at the divine sight, Ripley was fighting back tears. They've finally been able to see Luffy's white form, and he truly does look like Nika. As they all stared, a fading Ripley expressed her belief that he is the one, the warrior of liberation. A now foreheadless and blind Saint Summers questioned the mention of Nika. After all, that's just a story to scare celestial kids, right? But just when his eyes regenerated, a massive claw blotted out the sky. Loki crushed the invading demon in an instant. The children screamed when they saw the real Nidhogg. They couldn't believe that this was a thing that had saved them. The mention of Loki's crimes were so taboo and so long ago that they've never actually even seen or really known about this guy. So instead of being introduced to him as an evil destroyer, they now know him as their savior. So in a roundabout way, this warless culture that he so loathes is one that will actually be able to embrace him properly. But with that, Loki declared that it's time to move elsewhere. A shaking Chopper watched with Gabon from a distance. The old pirate confirmed that the dragon is in fact Loki, although this is his first time seeing him like this too. He remembered Elder Ja Rule's words on that fateful day, in regards to the forbidden devil fruit, the mythical Zoan dragon fruit, model Nidhogg. He explained that whoever eats it will become the world's biggest dragon, and that the size of the dragon is relative to the normal size of its user. A giant would grow larger than a human with it, and an ancient giant would be even bigger than that. So the bigger the user, the greater the devil fruit's inherent potential. And Loki is the biggest giant they've got. The Nidhogg is said to breathe lightning, and turn day into night when it takes flight. Shanks asked if the fruit was forbidden and hidden away because of how strong it is, but that's not exactly it. The fruit was actually being protected by the Hammer Guardian, Ragnir. The Elder shared an Elbaf legend about a god of war who fought wielding Ragnir. He transformed into a giant dragon and locked horns with Nika, the sun god, all while being joined by his loyal partner, the ice squirrel, Ratatoskr. That's the gist of it. When the ever-loyal squirrel's master perished, the rodent went on to possess his weapon, Ragnir. And since then, he has awaited the return of his beloved master, at least according to the legend. Chopper was still reeling from the sight while Gabon processed the knowledge that the ancient squirrel has ceased its guard duty. The nightmare monsters were running for their dreamy lives, as after centuries, Ragnir has finally made its choice. It chose Prince Loki, who now roars after the fleeing monsters like a vicious predator. The princely dragon expanded his maw to channel a surging ball of electricity. He launched it in the direction of his prey. Thrudheim, lightning annihilation! An emu-possessed Gunko silently observed. With no brook in sight, the dream monsters were destroyed in mass. Luffy and Ragnir were totally loving the mayhem, as seeing through Gunko's eyes, Imu found understanding. In the Holy Land, the king of the world recognized the Nidhogg. In the Room of Flowers, Imu realized that it was on Elbaf. Increasingly serious, the Master of Silhouettes mentally shouted that it was here all along. And we can only wonder why it's such a surprise that a fruit known for giant possession would be in Elbaf, the land of warrior giants. But given Ragnir's acceptance and the accompanying legend, it seems like while Luffy is the reincarnation of Nika, Loki is the reincarnation of the god of war. This adds more weight to Luffy's statement that he'll just beat Loki up if he goes too far, since apparently Nika did just that in the past. And for Nika to have done so, perhaps the god of war too fell under Imu's dominion. Something that's less likely to happen in this lifetime, considering what happened to his father. This was a very satisfying chapter, especially with that next level punch to a celestial dragon's face. so I'm very eager to see what happens next, and hope that you'll be here for it too. As always, I'm SLAYS of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching, and have an awesome day. I love you.